Thanks, Janet.
You're welcome.
So, as Janet mentioned, we're going to break up some of the performing arts disciplines between Annie and myself. So, I will start with the music and dance, and Annie will conclude with some theater programs. My biggest portfolio tip for students is simply to pay attention to the details in your portfolio and audition requirement. As you will begin seeing, or as you may have already experienced, the audition requirements for performing arts programs really vary across colleges and certainly programs. So we'll talk a little bit about music and dance simultaneously, and again, Annie will talk about theater. Performing arts majors in general, in addition to kind of assessing your skill through your audition, we're also going to be looking at things like your technique and your physical activity. So, for example, vocal techniques or musicianship, dancers, their physical technique. So the audition, again, is not just to kind of look at you as a talent, but also to see the technique that goes behind your work. And we want to obviously get to know your creative ambition and your expressive facility. So this is kind of encompassing of what the audition is going to look at. We'll look at dance first. Typically, dance auditions will include some type of group exercise as well as a solo performance. So being mindful of the type of dance program that you're applying to, you might be prepared to work in a ballet genre, or you might want to be prepared for a jazz exercise. And then obviously preparing your solo piece, kind of finding the groove where your performance style would fit into your dance school's performance styles as well. Music auditions, similarly, you will probably have some sort of performance ability. So in addition to actually preparing a piece or maybe even sight reading a piece, they're probably going to want to look at some foundational things like major and minor scales and ear training exercises, and of course the ability to sight read. So let's look a little bit closer at the music audition tips. And again, these will vary across colleges, so you just want to pay attention to the details. But typically, vocalists and instrumentalists, you'll probably play one or two prepared pieces. I think it's really important to get to know those pieces. In addition to knowing how to perform those pieces, I think being able to talk about the choices that you made, in addition to why you selected those pieces. But if you are going to, let's say, improvise a little bit or change the key, just being mindful of why you made those changes. It's never a bad habit to talk about your work or to be able to talk about your work. You want to memorize these pieces. Yes, it's okay to sight read or to have sheet music with these pieces, but you really want to know these pieces. Instrumentalists should be prepared to play those scales and arpeggios, drummers doing rudiments, etc. And again, sight reading will be a part of the audition always. My biggest advice with sight reading is don't stop. Mistakes are a part of human life. They're going to be a part of music, certainly in the educational process. So if you're sight reading and you do make a mistake, I think it's really critical to try to just continue to persevere through that performance. If you're performing music that is sight read, take a minute to look over the piece entirely. Be mindful of the key, the tempo, time signatures, your musical notation. And singers, if you are, needing an accompanist, make sure that you've arranged that accordingly. Some schools will have a live accompanist. Sometimes you're bringing a backing track, etc. Sage advice, but practice in front of as many people as possible as you begin preparing for these auditions, whether those are your classmates, maybe your instructors, maybe your family or your supporters. But get in the mindset of actually performing in front of people, so it doesn't feel quite as nerve-wracking. And you might find yourself applying to multiple schools. Again, these audition tips or audition guidelines will vary between schools, but kind of get to know the schools that do the similar types of music that you might be interested in. If you're interested in jazz, apply to a couple different schools that have strong jazz programs. If you're interested in classical music, apply to schools that have strong classical programs. And so we'll kind of segue over to dance. And similarly, dance auditions are going to vary across the schools. Most, again, dance auditions will include some sort of group components as well as an individual solo performance or prepared piece. So being familiar with your ballet foundation, modern and jazz, that's very common among schools. But some schools are doing programs in hip hop now, or doing a lot more contemporary performance and practice. So you might have the ability to prepare those pieces, or again, be in group exercise. Um, the faculty in the dance programs are going to be looking at your rhythm, your coordination, body structure, and potential to learn. And again, the group exercise is really a part of how you work in group, in concert. So getting the experiences working with other students and choreographing maybe yourself and under the direction of other people is never a bad skill to learn as well. I'll kind of wrap up with this. In addition to these being pretty varied across colleges, make sure that you take time to get to know the schools, your admissions representative, and reach out if you have any questions specifically about pre-screen requirements or actual day of audition tips. And most importantly, prepare. In addition to knowing your performances and your routines, things like knowing when to arrive. Are you going to get a room or a space to warm up? Paying your parking or your meter, or doing those tips. You just want to plan ahead so you're not super rushed the day of the audition, as well as getting time to warm up and stretch, etc. So Annie's going to take it away and kind of conclude here on the theater realms.
Yeah, thanks, Marty. So yes, we'll go and talk a little bit first about auditions and portfolios for theater programs. And those auditions for theater programs and applications for theater programs will typically start out with the university's general application process, and then include theater-specific applications or supplements. If you're going into a performance or an acting degree, you'll likely be asked to complete a pre-screen where you'll film yourself giving an introduction to who you are and why you're interested in studying theater, potentially talking about the specific program you're applying to in the specific university. And then you'll also film yourself performing typically 2 contrasting monologues. If you'll be applying to any musical theater programs, you may be asked to share some contrasting music selections and a dance or movement sequence as well. And then if you're applying to a theater arts or a technical theater degree, you should be prepared to submit a portfolio of your work that will include details of your work on specific productions, as well as likely some sort of narrative element to go along with that. Every student should be prepared with a theater-specific resume, in addition to the general resume or activity summary you might be submitting in other college applications. Your theater and your drama teachers can be a great resource for these, as they help you figure out what is kind of that industry standard and what they've seen students be successful with as far as formatting and level of detail in the past. Each school you apply to will do a great job of outlining exactly what's needed in the application process. So it's very important, just like Marty and Janet have said, to do your research and be very organized. I suggest maintaining a list and a calendar for each different school that you're applying to, with different needs and dates and deadlines. And then also keep a folder on your computer for each school with those specific requirements, as well as details of what you're submitting and when you're submitting it for each of the different programs. Also be aware that many theater schools may have different deadlines for pre-screens or other part of the process compared with the general university as a whole. All right, so we'll talk a little bit more about portfolio preparation. And as you do this, again, a lot of the suggestions shared about visual art can very much apply here. Make sure your portfolio is very clean and organized. Make sure each item is labeled clearly as well. When you're putting together your portfolio, make sure you're sharing specific examples of your work as it relates to your intended major at that specific institution, but also be aware that colleges may want to see more broad examples of what you've done. If you're asked to interview, be prepared to talk more about your own thought process, maybe difficulties you faced working on a particular project, and how you problem solve to come to a solution. Be ready to share what you have learned and how you've progressed, because that will better help the faculty you're interviewing with understand how you'd fit into their program. Many of the interviews will also include a discussion or overview of the school and program with actual faculty who teach in that program. So you can really also look at interviews as an opportunity to continue to learn about the program and ask questions of faculty that you'd be working directly with, so that you as well get a sense of what your fit would be like at that specific school. All right, now we'll talk about some audition tips for theater. After the theater pre-screen, you may be invited to audition for the school's faculty and staff, either on that specific school's campus or on location around the US. Many different theater schools will hold auditions in large regional cities, but then they also may participate in the unified auditions as well. You should be prepared at these auditions to perform multiple monologues in front of other applicants, as well as in front of the school's faculty and staff. You also may be asked to workshop a small scene with others in a setting that would mimic what you would see much more regularly in the classroom at that institution. Typically, all monologue material should be memorized, but again, each school is going to share details of what you should expect. You'll be most comfortable in the audition if you're calm and not rushed. So just like Marty mentioned, make sure you do your homework where that's concerned. Register for an audition date and time well in advance. My suggestion is as soon as the school reviews your pre-screen and offers you an opportunity to register for an audition, take a moment to select a date and time and location so that you can begin to prepare, and so that you also have your first choice of location and you don't have to make additional travel plans if you weren't already planning to do that. Do your research on where you'll park, give yourself plenty of time to get there, give yourself also budget time for signing in and finding a space to do your warm-up if one won't be provided for you. It's really important to go through your own routine and get calm and comfortable in the space. The more that you know what to expect and the more you are confident in what you've prepared, the better your experience will be and the more likely you will be to give a strong audition.
Okay, so here's some important dates. For my visual artists in particular, we talked earlier about NASAT accredited schools. Well, here's that day that you'll see most of those schools. It's called National Portfolio Day, and National Portfolio Day takes place about twice a year, and it happens in mostly all 50 states across the United States. And you would go to this website and look at their calendar to see what state you're in and the dates that you can attend. The other very, very important fair is the PVA fair, and that is hosted by the NACAC program, which is a national-based college a college fair program. And I can't stress enough, this is one of the most important fairs to go to for visual and performing arts. This takes place once a year, and you can go to the NACAC website and look under the PVA fairs and see when it's in your area. It usually is in the month of late September or early October. And last but not least, it's the unified auditions. And the unified auditions are what usually just the performing artists will go to, and that would be mostly musical theater, acting, and also some theater tech. And the unified auditions take place across the United States. And again, go to that calendar, or you will also find out by your school that you're auditioning for, when and what time these auditions will be, and you will sign up on their website.
All right, thank you, Annie and Janet. We have quite a number of excellent questions that we'll get to in a moment. We want to make sure that we leave our contact information with you all. So on the next slide, you'll see, again, our names, our institutions, as well as our email addresses. If you have specific questions about any of our programs, please feel welcome to connect with us. And we'll start with some questions here. Janet, would you mind talking a little bit in your experiences about, is it all right if a drawing is drawn digitally versus maybe a more traditional method of pencil or ink, etc.?
Absolutely, absolutely. Especially if you're going into any kind of digital drawing, computer art, animation, but also illustration. You will learn to use the digital tools when you're in college. So showing that you're also proficient ahead of time is a good thing. And a lot of students do prefer to do the digital. However, it would be nice to accompany that with some pre-production drawings or some sketches of where you were before that. That could be in the form of a sketchbook, and you could show your idea and your process, and then finally you're finished on the digital piece.
Awesome. And would you mind elaborating a little bit more on the advice on not drawing from photos for your portfolio?
Yeah, well, this is basically a form of plagiarism because you're copying from somebody else's artwork. Now, if they're your photographs, that's something different. So if you just, because sometimes we can't always get an animal to sit still for us if we want to draw an animal. So we take photographs of that animal. And then we use them back in our studio or wherever you're drawing as our reference. That is perfectly fine. It's taking somebody else's photograph of an animal and using that as your reference. Unless you're going to change it completely, it sometimes can be recognized by the viewer, especially in the admissions. And I would stay away from celebrities, photographs of celebrities. Those are used quite frequently unless you're going to change it around, maybe in a collage fashion or whatever, to make it more of a personal statement. But you want to be careful about drawing from photographs that are widely used, especially now with our internet.
Excellent. And maybe we'll conclude on the visual arts with this question. If a student or students are currently in the AP studio art programs, the portfolio that they're working towards, do you find those as being, producing examples of the type of materials that you'd want to include in your portfolio for a visual arts college?
Yes, it's an excellent start for a very strong portfolio. I recommend all students, if they can, if it's available, to sign up for the AP art class, because in the AP art class, not only are you putting together a breadth portfolio, which shows your academic kind of ABCs of drawing, your still lifes, or using different forms and mediums. But also in that AP class, you're working on a concentration, which is your personal statement based on a theme. And all of these things really help to build the portfolio pretty quickly. So I do recommend you using your pieces from your AP portfolio. And you have one of your best resources is your teacher. They will help you to compile that portfolio, take some of your best pieces and customize it towards each school and what they're looking for. Because not all schools are looking for 15 pieces, they might want 8 pieces. So those pieces that you are now working on in your AP art class are definitely great pieces to have in those portfolios. So definitely, if you can, please do enroll in an AP art drawing class.
Excellent. Thanks, Janet. Hey, Annie, there's some questions about kind of the majors being offered at both the BFA, but also the BA. Can you, in your experiences, just talk, do you often find that, musical theater might be offered as a BA and a BFA, acting as a BA, a BFA?
Yeah, sure. That's a great question. And I think one of the most common kind of answers in any type of setting like this is going to be, it depends, because it's really going to depend on the specific school and their offering. I think you'll be much more likely to see a BFA option in those areas that you mentioned, in those conservatory programs, at arts colleges and art schools, and then at, in DePaul's example, at the theater school at DePaul University, which is very much a conservatory style program, and for the most part only offers BFA major options to students. I think you'll be much more likely to see a Bachelor of Arts in a program like acting or theater or even musical theater at a school that's maybe not necessarily that conservatory style focus. So at another college or university that has a program like that, but might not have that conservatory style setup.
Awesome. And Annie, what's your experience with students who might be able to or interested in double majoring if they're in a BFA program?
That's a great question. And with a BFA degree, it's typically going to be very difficult to double major. So much of the coursework is prescribed for students, and they have very little time to take those additional electives and things like that might be interesting to them. I would say that at many schools, you might have the ability to pursue a minor, something along those those lines if you're pursuing a BFA. But double majoring with a BFA will be very difficult, especially if you're looking to stay within that recommended 4 years to graduation timeline. If you really are passionate about the opportunity to double major and you very much want to do two different things, I would suggest looking more specifically at Bachelor of Arts programs in whatever art-based area you're interested in, so that you have a little bit more of that academic structured flexibility, just based on the nature of the requirements of Bachelor of Arts programs.
Awesome. There was a great question on how a portfolio or audition might be arranged for somebody who's interested in sound engineering, and I'll kind of tackle that. And I apologize for not including that in the music bit, but similarly, these will vary from school to school. The college that I'm a part of, Columbia College Chicago, we totally welcome students who are interested in audio engineering or even acoustics to submit samples of their work. And let's not forget about sound art as an art form as well. So similarly, we want to see a few samples of your piece. That was maybe not a choice word there, but these are examples of your work, not samples necessarily. But we would want to see, like, are you a part of recording projects? Have you recorded live music, or do you do sound support for theater? So sometimes students who are interested in doing sound support for stage, for example, they're including resumes of all the things that they're a part of. So, you know, totally, colleges who offer audio engineering programs or sound art programs, there's absolutely space to submit work samples for your auditions or your portfolios. And on this same topic, this question's come up a couple times. You know, how do colleges deal with digital auditions or virtual auditions or portfolios versus in person? And I'll start, if I may, and we can all kind of opine on this, but the benefit of auditioning in person is that, in addition to being with people and I think sharing the energy and the vibes of each other, you'll also have the opportunity to get to visit that actual college campus. So you might get to obviously see the program that you're interested in, but also then being able to visit on-campus housing options, seeing the actual facilities. So I know we really encourage, when possible, that students do audition in person, but I know that most colleges will also totally understand and welcome digital or virtual auditions, and especially with the pre-screening process. You know, as Andy mentioned, you'll be uploading things perhaps before you even schedule your in-person or follow up with a virtual interview or audition. So the benefit is there, I think, for you, if you're serious about these programs, to, if possible, audition in person, because in addition to the audition or the interview, you'll actually be able to see a breadth of that campus and really get the culture and the experience as you're touring and visiting those campus spaces. Annie or Janet, do you have any insight or take on that?
I totally agree with you. I think it's a great way to see the campus. If you can, you know, audition on campus, you're kind of, you know, getting a couple of things done at once, you know, and I think it does put you more at ease when you could actually do it on campus. However, it's not a possibility for everybody. So I know at our auditions, at the unified auditions, we try to make our students feel as comfortable as possible. So don't worry about that. We'll try to make the atmosphere, you know, as relaxed as we can. And then also having other students there does relax you, because you have time to talk in between and share information and actually make new friendships sometimes. Auditions can be fun.
And then the only other thing that I would add is that if you are planning to pursue one of those more virtual opportunities for an audition, make sure that you're reaching out to the school that you're applying to with questions about that and to secure details as soon as possible. That should not be the way that you try to finish up your application to schools that you may be a little bit behind on the process with. It really should be something that you give a lot of time to setting up so that you also honor the college's time as well. Great.
Annie, do you have any advice on what students might put in their portfolios if they're interested in, like, stage management or, you know, the performing arts management? That is, that they're not going to actually audition with monologues, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. So for students like that, I would really encourage you to reflect on the ways in which you've been involved in that particular type of work in high school, or maybe in other community involved, community productions you've been a part of. If you're able to show some examples of how you've worked with a larger group, maybe you've done a little bit of directing, you've done some stage management, you've done some of that performing arts management, and are thinking about nonprofit arts management or commercial arts management. Being able to reflect and pull on specific examples for those things will be really helpful. Now, we understand obviously that maybe not every student has the ability to participate in things like that in high school. So the more that you're able to think about how you could apply the skills that you have already learned going forward, I think will be helpful. And know that the interview process for those is very much an interview and very much a conversation. It's not going to be an audition in the way that they're going to expect you to be up on stage talking about those types of things. It will be in a small group setting, person to person, so they can get to know you and what really motivates you in that kind of management or technical theater kind of sphere. Janet or Marty, if either of you have other things to contribute, feel free to jump in.
I totally agree with that. So our interview process for theater management or stage management or theater design and technology is done via Skype, or you can go in person. For the theater design and technology, it is definitely a portfolio. And then that portfolio would show, your expertise. It could be in set, it could be in costume, it could be in lighting. And sound, of course, you would submit like a tape of sounds that you created for productions. And then for stage management, keep like a binder of all the productions that you've worked on. And that binder can be sent ahead of time to your interviewer, and they will have it in front of them as they're talking to you. As much experience as you can show. If you don't have it available in your school, if you're doing community theater, you definitely should collect whatever you can from those things for references. It's a show me kind of thing. And I think the best way for theater management and also stage management is to show that binder of productions they've worked with, or staging marks that they did, or a list of people they worked with.
Totally. And Janet and Annie are really also talking about, again, that preparation piece with this. Yeah. In that, the audition or the portfolio, you don't really want to rush to do that just before you have to do it. I think taking all of the steps as you're going through your own school experience, whether that's through high school or even college, right? We have transfer students who will apply, and we are also welcoming them in the audition and the portfolio process. So saving your work, keeping copies of it, and really, I think when we were talking about like documenting our work, you really want to, I think, keep your resume, so to speak, up to date. Keep a list of the programs that you're on. Keep your sketches handy. Keep your tracks accessible. So when you are ready to actually submit work for your audition or your portfolio, you're not rushing to actually now capture that work. You've had it already. Janet, one of the other questions that we've had up here a couple times is kind of how the film portfolio process works. So a student who actually wants to be like a film director or a producer or a cinematographer, could you talk a little bit about how that might differ a bit?
Absolutely. Well, it's going to be a little bit different with each university, but the common factor is you're going to submit a film. You're going to submit at least 5 minutes of film. That could be broken up into 2-3 minutes, but at least 5 minutes. And it should show some kind of narrative. And what you're going to put on those films is what you did, in particular, because as we know, most films are a teamwork. And it shows that you can definitely work as a team. So if you were a cinematographer on one film, you will note that. If you were actually the screenwriter on that film, you will note that. If you were the director, you will note that as well. So again, film is collaborative, and it's very important to show that you can work with different people. But I think for us especially, we like to see a narrative. So if you're going to submit short clips, let it have a kind of a beginning and an end to it, and tell somewhat of a story, because you are a storyteller. Filmmakers are storytellers.
Amen to that. And I think one thing that I see a lot of, or we receive this question a lot, is, can I submit my entire 90-minute film? And I think this goes back to just paying attention to the details in your portfolio and audition requirements. Many times those portfolio and audition requirements are developed by the faculty members themselves. And they're the ones who are looking at your work. So I think you really want to honor the responsibility that you have with giving them what they're looking for. There's a reason why they have those guidelines. So as Janet mentioned, it might only be a few minutes of a 90-minute film that you're going to have to excerpt. But I think what is really critical is that you're honing in on, this is the moment in the story, or this is where the story starts developing. If you are doing a bit more of a montage or a reel type sample, have it kind of tell its own story about you as a storyteller. You know, with music students who might do a digital audition, if we are asking for two contrasting styles of pieces, we really want to see two contrasting styles. I use the example with my friends here that, you know, we don't want to hear the same tune just sped up or at a different tempo or in a different key. We really want to see something maybe that is more of a ballad, and something that is more of a, you know, an upbeat tune. Maybe doing something in more of a contemporary music style, but also honoring a classical foundation. So just really being mindful of those details in your audition and portfolio guidelines, but really honoring them, right? You don't want to necessarily overachieve, because then that might look like you're not paying attention to the portfolio or the audition guidelines. We have just a couple minutes, and I would love to maybe just kind of take a little bit of a moment, each of us, to talk a little bit about the pros and cons of going to an art school that's, as Janet mentioned, kind of its dedicated own art school versus an arts program that's part of a larger university with individual art programs.
Do you
Anyone?
want to start? Yeah.
Anyone first? Yeah.
Well, at Syracuse University, our College of Visual and Performing Arts is probably one of our oldest colleges on the campus. So it actually was started in 1873. And it was there because students who want to really focus on their art, okay, and get that BFA or the Bachelor of Music, also want the advantage of maybe reaching out. As Annie eloquently said before, it's extremely difficult to double major in the arts, since it requires, depending on what you're in, studio time, audition time, rehearsals, etc. It's a very, very demanding, extremely vigorous. However, there's always enough time to explore other things, because we're not all linear, right? We have other interests. A film major might want to be the next Steven Spielberg and want to learn and study some history. Or a fashion design major might want to run their own business and do some entrepreneurship classes. So that would be the advantage of choosing an art school within a university, because you have access to that. And it's not going to overcome your curriculum, because you'll have academic electives and studio electives in there that are going to be free choice for you to do that. So you're not making art in a box. That would be the advantage. How about you, Annie?
Sure. I think I'm going to kind of approach the question from a different way and just encourage you, as you're thinking about, you know, conservatory programs, conservatory style programs, art schools, or the more traditional college and university route, is to really look specifically at the degree you're interested in at that specific school. With performing arts management as an example, does that live in the School of Performing and Visual Arts? Is it a part of specifically a theater program or a music program? How much overlaps with the College of Business or the College of Communication? Really getting to know the details and the specifics on some of those programs you're applying to and what it will allow you to do, maybe from a study abroad perspective, or again, a double majoring perspective, or how much time it's going to require you to be on stage or practicing your craft, I think will help you figure out what types of programs at what schools would be best fit options for you that will really support what you want to get out of your experience.
Awesome. Thank you all for joining our presentation. These questions were so excellent, so well thought out. Thank you for the great questions, and thank you for wanting to know a little bit about arts colleges and the different types of portfolios and auditions. Last but not least, got to give a shout out to StriveScan. Thanks for hosting this event, and thanks for having us start off the week.
Of course. Thank you so much for everyone, for our panelists, our esteemed panelists who were able to join us and share all this wonderful information. Just as a quick reminder, this session was recorded and will be available to you, to everyone who attended. You'll get an email within a couple weeks with a link to view the information. As soon as you close this window, there'll be a very quick 4-question survey. We'd appreciate your feedback. And as another reminder, there are a ton more sessions that are available later throughout the week, and you can check out that full schedule, strivescan.com/virtual, and then we'll be adding more for the next 2 weeks as well. So thank you again to our panel, and have a wonderful day, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.